Hello, I'm Joshua Kitts of the Composed Dream Game RPG Marketplace, and today I want to talk about Centurion, Legionaries of Rome. You can acquire this and many other role-playing games at composedreamgame.com/marketplace. We do also now have a UK marketplace as well at composedreamgames.co.uk. So, what is Centurion all about? Well, Centurion is by Swords Edge Publishing, and I was going to highlight a few other games that they have. And I have thrown something on the floor. I'm just going to collect that. Swords Edge, the role-playing game, it is more or less the same engine as Sword Noir. It's a 2d10 system. There are some commonalities between most Swords Edge games and how they're created, including Nefertiti Overdrive. We did a video on Nefertiti Overdrive. It was the first RPG unboxing video we did. Go check that out if you're interested. Right now, Swords Edge is crowdfunding on Kickstarter the second edition of Nefertiti Overdrive. So, today, the focus is Centurion. I've been wanting to do a video about this for a long time. Last year was the 10th year anniversary of Centurion, and I ran a session of this at Terminal City Con in Vancouver in 2023 in Vancouver. Now, a good chunk of this book is history and context, covering 4 different eras. I'm going to look at the table of contents really quickly here, just to confirm. So those eras are, and the eras of play starts on page 66, so only the first 60 or so pages cover mechanics and context like that. The Late Republic is the first era, the Civil War, the Principate, and the Crisis of the Third Century. There are a few example NPCs in each of those, but the bulk of that is historical context. What was the society like? How did it change from prior? What was the military organization like? And so on. And how did this affect the legions? Mechanically, there is only one thing that changes between those eras in Centurion, and that is the aspects that everyone values. Aspects are a rather important part of how the game plays. In the Late Republic, those are duty, honor, and valor. When the GM is running the game, you set up challenges that, at least the main challenge in a scene, will usually have one of those aspects. If you overcome that aspect, you earn the rating of that challenge in that aspect in dice onto your character sheet that you can then spend on future challenges. Your character also values one of these 3 the most. In the Crisis of the Third Century, what the Legion values has changed, so they value strength, loyalty, and valor. Alright, so the way this is written is easy to read, relatively quick, fairly punchy. History content is quite good. I've recognized a number of the titles from the bibliography. It's a good summary of the history, in my opinion, and is done in a very, how does this affect my game? Like, there's literally headings throughout, after almost every major section in the sort of history section that says, how does this affect my game? Why is this important? This is actually a useful resource whether you end up using the mechanics in Centurion or not. If you want to set something in the Roman period, or if you just want some good context for an empire in any game that you're running, and how they organize or could potentially organize, and how that might affect people, and so on. So, very interesting stuff. The mechanics in this are rather unique. The way you construct characters is moderately similar to other Swords Edge games. But the die mechanic resolution system is unique. So I have a example character. I think we're going to start by looking at that. Everything is rated in D6, and when you do make a roll, you assemble those into higher die types. But we'll cover that after we have a look at this. So I love a good RPG where you can do everything in a half page or on a cue card and I probably could have squeezed this on a cue card. So luck is an important idea. If you roll a 1 on a die, you can earn luck. I believe it's if you roll a 1. And then you can spend luck to use extra elements or have help from other characters. So for my character, we just went with the name Lucius Gaius Apernicus, and concept is important, but you split that up between, you split the value of concept, which a starting character has 7 dice, essentially, that they can split up between their concept and their elements. Everybody has these 3 traits rated at 2, 3, and 1. You just rate physical, mental, social at whichever level you prefer. So in my case, I went with 3 for mental. He's a very smart, clever guy. 2 for physical and 1 for social. So the concept for him is rank. I chose to rank it at 2. I could have ranked it higher. Valorous Equestrian Decurion. Concepts are often in 3 parts. You always will have the aspect that your character focuses on or prefers or is most important to them. And that'll be the first item. So valorous in the case of Lucius here. Equestrian is his social position, or the sort of strata in society he kind of came from. That could be if you're part of a certain tribe or something as well, and you're part of the auxiliaries or something. And then you might often have a rank if you have one. This could just be like scout, but in our case, we went with Decurion for a reason which we might we'll touch on in a bit. His elements, you make these up yourself, you name them yourself. You probably do want to talk with your game master to make sure that they make sense for what he's planning to run. So it should be done in tandem. And we just went with horsemanship, languages, tactics, and scout. Now the final thing that you need for a Centurion character are pivots. You change these every session. Pivots are small goals, or they could be larger goals that your character cares about. If you complete one of those goals, you can earn a die into one of your aspects, and you can spend dice from aspects. One of the main ways the game runs is in scenes. You'll set up challenges, and challenges should always have a aspect to them, or at least the major challenge in a scene should have an aspect to it. If the players do overcome that, then they earn dice that they can kind of stockpile on their character sheet into that particular aspect. The one you care about, those dice are worth a little bit more to you when you spend them, and one of the things you can do with them is remove consequences or conditions that have been imposed on your character with those. You can also just spend out of them to essentially fight harder in a particular challenge that is important to you. Alright, so I kind of briefly touched on, you're assembling dice into higher die types. How does that work? Well, first of all, I think it's important to say that this resolution does take a bit of time, so you don't want to be rolling frequently in Centurion. And I think that's actually generally good advice. If you can avoid rolling, if the narrative works, if it flows, don't roll in an RPG. Just carry on the story. Now, what should happen is a roll does a lot, because every die that conquers another die in Centurion has some sort of narrative effect or creates some sort of a condition on an opponent or yourself. So d6s can be assembled. 2d6 can be turned into a d8. 4d6s can be turned into a d10. 8d6s, I think, can be turned into a d12. And I think that's the highest it goes. The GM sets up the challenge first, and rules as written is always going to be the person presenting how they have assembled the dice, which lets the players react to that and sort of assess how much risk they want to be taking, how kind of gambling they want to take things, because if you go with more lower dice, you're more likely to take damage, but you're more likely to get luck, and you might be more likely to be able to overcome some of the opponent's dice. The highest die that is rolled between the two parties, the highest die type with the highest value goes first. So, and then the next of the highest die type goes next. So, somebody with a higher die does have a big advantage, but they don't have as many effects that they can have on the opposition. Alright, so how did this one run when I ran it? Quite well. I will be honest, I completely forgot about the luck mechanic, so we neglected that. We had a fair bit of social investigation at the beginning. I was using Hispania Ulterior Motive. This is just a quick print off I did. All the there's 4 of I'm dropping next to it. There's 4 adventures for Centurion that we have in PDF available on the marketplace, and this was an interesting one from the Late Republic and folks had a good time kind of exploring the space, learning a bit about the ranks and so on, and we had a nice little tussle at the end, and there was some good investigation along the way and negotiation along the way, which we had some rolls for as well, and folks were earning dice into their aspects and got to spend them towards the end. It felt good. It felt very good. I do usually like to read something from the book, because part of the point of this is to make it feel like maybe you've had a chance to look at and get a sense of how the book works, like you were in a store. Now, I will say that, you know, making a challenge is very easy. That right there is a challenge. Just a few terms and a ratings. Similarly, characters are rather straightforward to build. You can make groups as a shared challenge as well, quite easily. That works well. What I want to read is something very briefly from the header here is the structure of society. This is a very cursory examination of Roman class structure focused on generalities. It's for a game, not for your dissertation. The information here should give you a rough idea of how Roman society worked. It's meant to give you enough grounding so that you feel comfortable playing in a Roman setting, but also provide enough background to make the players feel immersed in Roman society. There was so much depth to this topic that you could spend a lifetime studying it, and people do. I haven't spent that long, a lifetime. This is Fraser speaking very directly to you. It's going to show. Repeat after me, role-playing game. Now, as I said earlier, I think this is actually very well done. I haven't spent a lifetime studying Rome either, but it's an enjoyable topic that I've spent some time on for sure. So a good summary of the history of Rome overall. I recognize a number of titles from the bibliography at the end of this, from some of the university books that I read during some university courses on Rome. So there'll be a section on, you know, society every time, and then how is this useful in my game, what the ranks might be, or how the Legion has changed, and how is this useful in my game for each of these eras. Okay, I'm going to jump around a little bit on page 90. This is a section for the Late Republic, which is the first era that is covered in this. So, Decurion, that's covering some of the ranks. I'm going to read a bit from Decurion. The legionary cavalry, as distinct from the allied cavalry, operated in groups of 30, known as turma, singular turma, or squadrons. Each squadron had 3 decurions, singular decurio, with the most senior among them commanding the squadron as a prefect. Each decurion selected an optio to act as his second in command and maintain order from the rear rank. So, I made somebody who's a decurion. That means he is one of the leaders of a cavalry unit in Rome. How does this affect my game? Every section quite frequently has how does this affect my game, and it's frequently written in context of being very gameable. So, since the characters are going to be in the legions, they need to know how the legions work. The difficulty in Centurion is that the characters generally operate outside of the formal legion structure, giving them independence and a variety of possible adventures and actions. As such, they would not have a formal position in the legion, and therefore they would not have a rank, given the legionary rank was tied to positions. Now, this carries on and talks about how it's wise to have characters set somewhat outside of the legion for whatever reason. My concept was, in this case, that he's not currently leading a terma, but he has in the past. Frequently, Fraser in this particularly recommends in military campaigns that you play more scouts, special forces, special units that have some independence to operate. That might be hand-selected by, say, the Tribune in this era to accomplish specific tasks, be special advisors, and so on. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. I do think there are other ways to run things as well. If I was to criticize this game, there isn't really, and he sort of advises against, any large-scale battles or using these mechanics for any large-scale battles. And I actually think what you have here as a system can work fairly well for that. I think you could have the characters find different ways to increase the forces or the morale of troops leading up to a battle, and then you could actually resolve it relatively quickly using the system. And that could be background, primarily background, for what's happening. And I don't think the spirit of this game would be that they would be in danger for that. Your characters. The unit would flee, maybe the unit gets captured, would be kind of the worst, but your characters survive, and you see where that goes. And part of that is, as somebody who's run a recent game using my Dungeons Unleashed, which is a hack of my Simple Superheroes game that has a fair bit of that kind of conflict, skirmish conflict game. And in this first adventure, there is a skirmish that happens at a fairly large scale. So you do have some guidance on that if you pick up Hispania Ultra Motive. Centurion, a very interesting engine. It's the 10-year anniversary. We made Lucius Gaius Apernicus a Decurion because you can get 10% off by using coupon code Decurion on Centurion in print or PDF and on any of the PDF adventures. And there's a bundle of all 4 of the PDF adventures as well. I hope that's piqued your interest in picking up a copy of Centurion. I'd appreciate feedback on the video, what you thought about it. If you have any questions, comment below. Perhaps also head over and check out the crowdfunder for Nefertiti Overdrive. Thank you, and as always, good gaming.